How you doing? Today we're going to be doing something pretty cool and unboxing Traxxas' new Revo 2.0 four-wheel drive, long wheelbase, technically 8-scale, electric, brushless powered monster truck. And this is Traxxas' new take on a classic design. It came around in about 2004 in the form of the original Revo 2.5. That was a nitro-powered monster truck. And when this thing came out, let me tell you, I mean, you take a lot of stuff for granted as the years go by, but that was a long time ago. I remember when this thing came out, man, and it blew people's minds with the design aspects that it had. Monocoque, aluminum chassis, lay-down suspension with push rods and cantilevers that operated it. Nobody had ever seen anything like it before. And Traxxas was still riding high from the debut of the T-Max in the late 1990s, and they were looking for something to kind of take their race class to the next level with monster trucks. So this Revo, this one, which is a redesign of the original Revo, which was kind of taking the T-Max's domination of that market to the logical conclusion performance-wise at that time. So that was 2004, the original debuted. In 2006, Traxxas dropped the 3.3 nitro engine, and the Revo got that treatment too. Now at this time, the Revo was still strictly nitro. There were no electric Revos available until 2008. The Revo 3.3 Platinum was released. It had aluminum shocks on board and some other modifications from the factory. The wheelbase had been increased by this time as well on all the Revo offerings. The 2.5 original Revo is the only one that has the shorter wheelbase. All the other Revos are at least 30 millimeters longer, and the Platinum editions are 19 millimeters longer than that because of an extended rear A-arm setup that they used on it. In 2008, also early in the year, they released the E-Revo, which at that time was powered by two longitudinally opposed reverse rotation Traxxas Titan 550 motors. And let's see, at the end of 2008 they released the brushless E-Revo. Now since then they've done the Platinum edition and I think another update of the Platinum edition with longer wheelbase included and everything like that. So that's a quick history of the Revo, get you up to snuff on like what exactly we're up against as far as the design of the Revo 2.0 is concerned. It's got some big shoes to fill. I'm real excited to see what they got going on here and what they've improved. You know, let's have a look at it and get into it. You can see here, this is our first delivery, the very first E-Revo 2.0 that we've received. And on the side of the box, it has the E-Revo's specs and the corresponding performance that you can get out of different battery setups and the corresponding Traxxas corporate specific skill level that I guess applies to each one. The Revo has TSM installed from the factory. Let's have a look here. Put my X-Acto knife away so no mishaps occur. Cameraman Steve is helping us today, so it's pretty rad. I'm glad he was able to join us. And as always, I have the box justified in a goofy direction, and I'm going to have to adjust it. Now have a look in there at the way it looks when you first open the box. It's always something exciting to see. I'm digging on this paint job. It has kind of like a crazy mid-2000s new metal sort of a vibe going on. I'm sorry about that noise of the tire as if it was horrible. And that's kind of like a cool modernized homage to the original vibe of the hip world when the original Revo was released. Or maybe I'm just reading too much into it. I can see right off the bat that they've improved the wheels and tires. I would consider this to be an improvement because they feel a lot stiffer than the old ones did. So I would suggest that they have less of a tendency to balloon out under hard acceleration conditions. I'm going to roll this guy out and leave him right there for a second while we bust out our tool kit, which has a couple of like open-ended little type of wrenches here, some zip ties, T-handled hex, a couple of other hexes and things, and of course your manual and a sticker sheet so you can custom your truck out and cover it in stickers and be a rad dude in that respect. When we're digging around in here, we are also going to discover a Traxxas TQI radio system that is Traxxas Link enabled. So Traxxas Link doesn't come installed in here right out of the box, but it's no problem to go ahead and upgrade it. And as always, you have all your programming configurations. Takes 4 AA batteries. There's your power switch right there. Really natural driving position, and the feel of the wheel is the same. Nothing's changed with the radio, you know. So if you've got a Traxxas car already, you are probably used to the feel of this radio. It's a nice one. It works for its purposes. 2.4 gigahertz, of course. I mean, what year is it, right? I'm gonna put this to the side. Now, having a look at this thing like we went over, like Traxxas basically blew the world up, the RC world, with the release of the T-Max in 1999. That wasn't enough for them, so they came around and they released the original Revo. And coming from the dudes that released, I mean, the Bandit, the Rustler, the world went crazy with the Slash in the early mid-2000s when that was released. So I think these guys might know a thing or two about building a badass RC monster truck, RC truck that's going to just rock the world and make people go crazy, okay? Now, you'll notice right off the bat, we have kind of an X-Max inspired, and that phraseology will be coming up a lot in this review, I'm sure, body clasp here that eliminates the need for body pins. Maybe you're into it, maybe you're not. It should be no problem to change it to a body pin type setup if that's what you decide to do. So I'm pulling the body off right now. Have a look at the body there, Steve. Now you can see here that, like, not only X-Max wise is it borrowing that design, but it also has a front to back kind of integrated roll cage into the body to add a little bit of rigidity to that, and a hard plastic sort of veneer over the top of the roof, much like the X-Max has. So in your hard rollover crashes, you're not putting holes in the Lexan and busting out the body post, because these trucks get heavy, you know what I'm saying? And people like to bash these trucks. They don't... I hesitate to say that an 8-scale race buggy is going to get babied, but let's face it, you know, you have a lot more intentional driving taking place under 8-scale racing circumstances than you're going to have with... I just totally lost my train of thought because this thing looks awesome. So let's just get right into it and see where we're at with it. So, right off the bat, I'm going to tell you that you're obviously able to switch those out with body posts if you like. Obviously, or maybe not obviously, you can tell that I'm a body post fan, generally speaking. But, we're going to get into this guy, and you know, I'm in the habit of kind of starting off at the power system, and we see that the Traxxas VXL 6S power system is installed. So this is 6S capable, the peak voltage that will definitely be capable of knocking your socks off no matter who you are. That's a 22.2 volts peak, and there's your series connector right there. So you're going to be running 3 cells, 2 of them. If you like, it can also run 2 cells or nickel metal. I wouldn't really do a nickel metal setup on this. I would at least run a 2-cell LiPo duals. I'm seeing these kind of like monocoque covered type assemblies that are going up over the top of the shocks, which look really cool, and they protect the shocks and increase the rigidity. You see the same kind of action going on in the back right here. Of course, this is 4-wheel independent suspension. And I was looking right here. You'll notice, if you have a look here, not only is this... this mounting plate for the motor is significantly beefed up. I want to say the old one was 3mm. With this one, you're looking at a 5mm mounting plate. Same hardware is here, but if you'll have a look right there, Steve, you see what I'm saying with this fixed position. It's kind of, I would guess you could call it semi-adjustable motor mounting setup. So depending on the gear that you're using, spur gear, pinion gear combination wise, you're always going to have a perfect mesh. This is the kind of setup that's used on... what was it, the Ford GT, the Traxxas Fortec 2.0 car has a similar setup to that. It's a pretty classical thing. Traxxas didn't come up with it, but it's definitely a more like error-proof, more user-friendly way of doing things, and can always be reverted back to the kind of free-floating, more old-school setup if you want to. Traxxas has retained the dual 70-75 servo setup, and the receiver does have 2 steering servo ports so that you don't have to run a Y harness, so you're not sucking a ton of voltage out of one port, which can be a problem in high torque applications. You got that going on here. The entire transmission assembly on this truck is lower profile. See, I was going to get out an old school Revo so you guys could see like the difference here, but unfortunately I don't have any floating around right now. I usually do in the back for repairs or whatnot. But this entire transmission motor mounting assembly is mounted lower into the chassis to kind of reduce the center of gravity. And even though that kind of seems like a little bit of a silly notion to try to make a low center of gravity monster truck, I mean, you're looking at it. There's super wide stance, wide offset. Even the newer wheels have a much wider offset than the old ones do. The A-arms are nice and long, and they're just taking it to the max. No pun intended, of course, when you're dealing with Traxxas as far as the stance of the car is concerned and the performance that you can glean out of a 4-wheel drive, long wheelbase sort of monster truck setup like this one. You'll notice that the shocks are also aluminum instead of being the plastic GTR type shocks. These are aluminum threaded body type shocks, big bores right out of the... Well, I shouldn't call them big bores because Traxxas big bores are actually intended for like the smaller cars. But these are GTR shocks in aluminum, threaded bodies, fully adjustable. These new tires are called Talons, and They're EXT, Talon EXT, this guy says. They have kind of a cool, like, 6-bolt looking faux lug nut setup and a faux bead lock setup on here. I like the way they look, and the tire tread is nice and aggressive and pretty cool looking. Now, onto some of the stuff you can't really see when it comes to the drivetrain. Instead of using a slipper clutch, this uses what's called Cush drive. Kind of a funny name, especially, like, you know, if you're from Southern California. And it uses an elastomer damper that simulates the effect of the coil springs inside of a car's clutch in a manual transmission. I'm not that familiar with automatic transmissions, but I know that there are these springs between the pressure plates in a clutch in a manual transmission. Maybe you've seen them. And what they do is they dampen drivetrain vibration from the engine into the drivetrain. And that's exactly what this does by the use of kind of a laterally oriented damper system that's built in between the spur gear and like the input shaft that goes into the transmission. The transmission uses all 12 millimeter wide Mod 1 idler gears, and that goes down to a torque biasing center differential. So I'm not really exactly sure if that's like a 4-gear sort of differential. This is a really new truck. I haven't been inside any of these yet, obviously, or if it's a true like Torsen type torque biasing differential. I will be anxious to find that out when they start to come in for repairs. The front and rear diffs are X-Max inspired, 4 gears apiece with enlarged spider gears, and the entire assemblies are enlarged. You can also see that on the out drives, they use dog bones with drive cups that are quite deep, probably a 1/2 inch deep, and it uses steel dog bones that go out to the drive wheels. Then there's a CVD type universal joint that goes through the out drive to the wheels and tires here. The R17 millimeter hexes. We're used to that from the old school Revos, all the way from the debut of the original brushless E-Revo, which is super cool. So we got the diffs out of the way, and the hardened steel drive shafts like we talked about. And also, while we're at it, if you take a look at these arms, I mean, I don't really know if I can demonstrate to you. Like, here's an X-Acto thickness next to what we all as hobbyists should be used to, an X-Acto knife, right? These arms are probably about 15% just heftier all the way around than the previous generations. So you're going to have a little bit more durability out of that. You kind of have the RPM effect without what some have called the excessive flex of an RPM setup that can cause drive shafts to bend, which I have seen before. It's not super common, but under super hard driving conditions, you can have that happen. A lot of the parts that are retained from the previous design, it looks like, include the suspension cantilevers. The rear wing looks really similar. I'm looking here now, and the end links on these push rods, or the shocks, look to be about the same, but the end links on these control arms are beefed up, and I'm not so sure, but the control arms themselves look like they're 5 millimeter. I think that's probably the same as the previous generation. And so you're looking at that right there. It's looking pretty cool. And also the center drive, in addition to that torque biasing differential, your center drive, which is concealed underneath this plate right here. So Steve, have a look down in there at that U-joint right there and see how big that U-joint is. So the center drive, while it's not steel, is significantly beefed up from the first generation and even like the Platinum editions previous of the brushless E-Revo. So this thing looks pretty radical. These guys have a look at the way it looks with the body on it. Let's see, I don't want to put this on wrong and look like a dope. Where are we at with it? Looks like I might go under there. And then, yeah. Remember earlier when I was saying how much I like body posts? Well, I might not be the only one, but maybe I am. Who knows? Who cares? It's all about personal preference. Alright, looks like I've just about got it. You know, there we go. This guy. So there we go, ladies and germs. And that right there is your brand new, straight up out of the box, still got little styrofoam dingleberries on the tires. The sucker's so fresh. Beefed up, basically fully redesigned and across the board improved Traxxas E-Revo 2.0 brushless edition. Excited to see what it's capable of, and I will keep you filled in on that. I think it's going to be a rad thing. You guys take care, and thank you so much for joining us.